Hey, welcome to Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. Educated educators talking education. Class is in session. It's midweek. And Jacob, it actually is pretty close to class being in session for most teachers and kids around the country. In fact, some young ones have already returned to classrooms as early as last week in some districts. But I'm pretty sure over there for local listeners and civic media, things don't quite start up for the kids till closer to the end of the month or maybe the very beginning of September. But teachers certainly are beginning to report to classrooms, to clock in for their pre-fall professional developments and all the exciting ways that they gear up for the youngins to enter their classroom. But Jacob, we're in it now. I think we're coming out of the what I call the off season and into the preseason or the season. If you're out there already in a classroom, we love you. But tonight, Jacob, on Busted Pencils, we're talking about what it really takes to rebuild public education. I mean, we're always kind of talking about that, but this is one of those exciting days where we got a guest. And especially when we talk, Jacob, on here and pencil busters out there listening, we talk a lot about rural schools and urban schools. And we've mentioned a couple weeks ago about how much we can all learn from our rural districts. They've navigated a unique set of challenges for decades in this country. And they're at the forefront, I would say, of implementing change. They've had to really learn to do things differently, often on the fly. I talked to a local rural superintendent a couple weeks ago, and he said, well, Johnny, for years, we've been having to sort of figure out sometimes how to land a plane that's already in the air while we're building it. He's like, so when a curveball gets thrown our way, we're all hands on deck in our district in a unique way that sometimes helps us figure things out a little differently than other districts. Maybe big suburban districts or large urban districts don't have that closeness or don't have that utility purpose that so many people in a district play. Well, instead of me just rambling on about about rural school districts, we got a guest, Jacob. We got superintendent of Aliva Strum School District in Western Wisconsin, Corey Kulig, here with us. Tim has been texting me all day about how excited he is to have him on because he's a visionary co-founder of, you might remember, listener, when Superintendent Mike Bigley was on and he was talking about liftoffs. Well, Corey's going to talk a little bit about all that exciting stuff with us here tonight as well. So from bold experimentation to AI-powered learning tools, liftoffs, and all the stuff that they're doing there with Corey is providing rural schools as leaders in a way of future-ready learners. So, Corey, welcome to the show. Thanks for busting pencils with us today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Was that intro long enough, or do you want us to maybe do some more? Because we can add a couple more minutes to that.
Hey, just for our listeners out there, Tim can't be here this afternoon, a last-minute meeting he got called into, but he sent me the intro, and I cut it down on the fly, probably why it's as choppy as it is, because I'm trying to clip. I'm like, this is like an 8-minute intro. So I think I made it a 12-minute intro, cutting it down. But let's just get into it, Corey. Can you tell us a little bit about your story? Kind of take us back to the beginning, especially in relationship to liftoffs. So tell us a little bit more about you and about liftoffs.
Well, I've been in education now. This is my 24th year, and this is my 8th year as superintendent. Prior to that, I spent 10 years in the principalship, and so I've had an opportunity to see a lot of things. A lot of things evolve as we go through the years. All the initiatives that have come and passed, and for the first time, I guess in my career, I feel energized and excited about something that actually kind of makes sense. And using an AI powered, we talked about differentiated instruction for so long through the years and tried to figure out ways to do this, exhaustive ways to do this for teachers in classrooms. Now we finally have a tool that can make that happen. So it's, as a leader, I think it's my job to look forward into the future, looking at the things that we do from an education perspective. We have to think differently. We have to do things differently if we expect different results. And that's what liftoffs is. It's a bold implementation of a new model that we're finding really good success with early on.
Oh, I love that, Corey. Hey, just for our listeners, because this is lingo that probably a lot of listeners out there are familiar with, but some might be, I'm not really sure. Differentiated instruction. And Corey, you're well positioned for this. Can you kind of just give a general base description of what is differentiated instruction? And then from your perspective, because I was right there with you teaching, trying so hard to implement differentiated instruction, and it's really great. And why it's so great, we'll get to in a minute, but it's really, really labor, like heavy labor lift. Like not even like, hey, this is like teachers just not wanting to work hard. Like to do it really well is nearly impossible in some contexts. Like you can. But let's get into, can you describe, Corey, what is differentiated instruction?
Well,
Just a ground level.
yeah, you have kids all across the board in terms of their abilities, their skill gaps, their levels of knowledge, their abilities. And as a teacher, you've got to try to meet all of those different ability levels. And one teacher, even with a teacher's aide or instructional coach or whomever you have in the building or in the classroom, you have 20 or 25 kids in the classroom. You have kids at the 15th percentile, but you also have kids at the 95th percentile and everything in between. And to try to develop a teacher-led lesson that's going to fit what those students need, what every student needs, is virtually impossible. And like you said, it's labor intensive to try to do it. It's exhausting work. Teachers are working harder than they've ever worked, and not seeing that those results. So we're thinking of ways to use personalized instruction approach, AI powered personalized instruction, so kids can get what they need when they need it, and they're not waiting for the teacher to spoon feed that next layer of content to them, all while the teacher's able to provide those interventions in real time during the core instructional period. So students, you can do it in less time. You can do it in a more appropriate manner. Kids, if they're not a math student, they don't want to spend more time in math. They don't want to get pulled out of the classes they want to be in to take more math. They want to be able to get what they need when they need it. So that's really what it is in a nutshell. And for the first time, we're able to try to deliver that more effectively.
Yeah, Corey, that's great. And then just for our listeners out there, you might be like me, Tim's usually here. He's a champion of AI. I'm sort of the anti-AI guy, but I've come a long way in the last couple of years. And mostly because of the kind of thing Corey's talking about, like even myself as a teacher, working with teachers, being in school districts and in school conversations where we're looking at how is AI a tool in the classroom that enhances the learning experience, that makes teaching better. So, Corey, but when I first hear it, and some of my colleagues are still stuck there, they're like, hey, this is just trying to put kids in front of a computer or hand them a laptop and, and not engage or replace teachers. I know it's not true, but can you dispel that myth? Maybe just describe for the naysayer out there what this looks like. Like you hear AI, you think robot teacher.
Yeah, it doesn't replace the teacher. The role of the teacher is never more important than it is in this personalized learning model, because the teacher's not standing and delivering a set of instructional things. They are going around, learning what students know. They are working with students in small groups, all while other students are continuing to learn. So we're using, the teacher as what they're designed to do, the art of teaching, to get to know their students on a personal level, see firsthand what they're capable of doing because they're learning and they're showing them. And it's not just sit behind a computer. It's anything but that. We use vertical learning. Kids are out of their chairs. They are at a board. They have different tasks. They change roles within those. So it's anything but standing or just sitting in front of a computer. There are certain times when that will happen, but that's certainly not what we're hoping to do here.
Corey, if I could
Well,
ask you a question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Jacob.
Coming off what you're talking about, and you've gotten into it a little bit, but let's say that I'm the new student transferring into this district. What do I notice as a student is different about the way you guys do things?
Well, you're going to notice that you're working with all of your classmates. Teachers aren't assigning groups. You might work with one group one day, the next day you're working with a different group. The one day you might be the recorder, the next day you might be the person that explains it to the teacher as the teacher's moving across the classroom. The next day you're the thinker. You're always changing roles. And that's one of the things kids tell us. They love working with all of their classmates. They love being out of their desks. They love having different roles. They love having to explain their answers to the teacher, having the teacher ask follow-up questions, greater depth of knowledge type questions to challenge their thinking. So that's what you're going to see. And the time goes by faster. Kids are engaged. Engagement rises, discipline disappears, and kids really have gravitated to that model.
That's amazing to hear, and it all makes sense, Corey, because these are all things we know as teachers and as school leaders out there that are sort of like hindrances in the process, right? When school starts to be more about compliance and less about engagement, when we're as teachers, constantly doing little disciplinary things all over rather than have, a good flow to the whole experience that kids are engaged in. Like you said, they want to be there, they're enjoying that human connection about
Mhm.
stuff, which we think about, especially middle school and high school learners, like their social groups are really important. We can argue that all the way down, but especially in middle school and high school, those that, I was a math teacher for years and I would always joke, but it's true. I would teach, 8 different ways to do a problem. And, like certain students, I still don't get it. I don't get it. Talk to your friends. We'd always have like a little session, like talk to your friends. You could teach somebody, you can, do 5 less problems on the next sheet we do if you show someone how you solved that equation. So I'd hear a student say exactly the same way. I'd explained it maybe a handful of times. Boom, it clicked.
Well,
Right. So when,
yeah, the best way for students to learn is from each other.
yeah,
And if the teacher's in the classroom and if they are sitting idly watching this unfold, which I've been in those classrooms, I've seen it. And in 24 years of education, it's some of the most impactful and magical things that I've seen is where kids are, without prompting from the teacher, assisting other students, helping them see it from a different lens. And you're exactly right. Students learn better from each other than they do from the teacher in many cases.
and this gives the teacher an opportunity, it sounds like, to sort of facilitate that process, to really focus on that that role of being a teacher, like to really kind of have that super tool that helps them differentiate the curriculum, the instruction, have those personalized plans, and and keep up, because even the best, very best teachers, we've talked about it on here, Jacob, you can remember some of the shows, and listeners, I'm sure you've heard it many times, like we learn to teach in a way where we can't sustain it. We can have like 2 or 3 years of doing it at our very, very best, and still we're hard on ourselves because we know we could do better. But the shift and the change of labor that kind of helps teachers reach these diverse needs that all students have, that help us focus on that human connection. I think it's an exciting moment. So, Corey, I'm going to come back to this for you because you mentioned something that, is really powerful to me as a fellow educator. I'm 25 years now into my career and did different things, classroom teaching, school leadership, and did teaching teachers now and research in higher ed and being part of Busted Pencils. But the that's a powerful statement that this is one of the things that you're most excited about over the course of your career. So I want to come back to that and talk a little bit about, what about the moment that we're in right now, this particular group, this community that you're in, what's happening there that you could put a statement like that out there. And then we're going to go into kind of, Corey, I want to hear from you the kind of the future, where you think things are headed, because this is truly an exciting moment.
Well, every time you're given an opportunity, you have to take that opportunity. And I see a golden opportunity right in front of us. With the AI, it's just the tool. I mean, AI is just a tool that we're using. It's not replacing the teacher. It's not changing necessarily what we're doing. It's giving us more power through a tool. And really, this is all about personalized learning. This is about creating an approach that kids can move at their own pace, that they can learn in different styles, different methods. They can be challenged in different ways. As we look at the future of education, we haven't changed anything. I mean, for so long, we've added things, we've tried, we've dabbled, we've had initiatives, we've done this. We thought one-to-one computing was going to be this magic bullet. It's just a tool, like anything else. It's a tool. It's a method. Just like the internet changed education. But when we talk about what this is capable of increasing student engagement. And one of the biggest detractors from education is just discipline and disengagement from students in the classroom. And when that happens, it's really difficult when you have a student that's disengaged, no matter how talented they are, to get them to achieve to their potential. So our goal is to keep them engaged throughout by giving them continual tasks that they can feel value in, that they can feel like they're a part of.
The thing that really excites me about what you're telling me, Corey, is that when I think back to being a student myself, and I think about, well, what did I not like about school? And it's the sense of it being boring. We're doing the same thing all the time. It's repetitive. But your vision seems to be about dynamism, doing new things, giving students opportunities to try things, to learn in that way. I really think you're onto something there. Can you talk a bit more about that and where you see that going and how that helps kids?
Oh yeah, we've all been in classrooms where you're done with whatever task was assigned, and the teacher, "Oh, don't work ahead. Just wait for everyone else to be finished." And what happens at that particular moment when you're a kid that's easily distracted? Once you're distracted, it's difficult to get back into that flow. When you're going, you want to keep going, right? I mean, still to this day, when I'm on a roll with something, I don't like to be interrupted. I
Yeah.
don't like to have to stop and wait for something. I want to keep going, and that's what we're allowing kids to do. But also, you want to be challenged, and you want to use those critical thinking skills. You want to be innovative. You want to do tasks that are meaningful. I mean, whether you're learning about something that's math driven, concept that's math driven, how do you apply that to things that are in this room, that are in your school? And if you can show kids those examples and challenge them with, different challenge-based things and project-based things, they don't even know they're learning. They're just doing it and they're engaged and they're leaning in and they want more.
Part of it too seems to be that the idea of challenging the students and being able to customize things to each student's needs, because some students, they're challenged by chapter 1. Some of this stuff is hard. Some students, they get to their challenge in chapter 3 or 4, and by liberating them to move ahead, yeah, get to chapter 4, get to that part that challenges you, or if you need to stay here, hey, chapter 1's challenging. Everybody's working on that part where they're actually thinking, actually dealing with those challenges. I think that's great, Corey.
Yeah, and of those kids that are working ahead, if they're on chapter 4 and another kid's still on chapter 1, then those chapter 4 kids, they have a project that they can work that works on, broadening that knowledge, that depth of knowledge. Start getting into depth of knowledge 3 and 4, so you're not skimming the surface just trying to meet minimal state standards or national standards or whatever standards you're trying to meet. You're actually applying what you've just learned in a challenge-based, project-based approach to that, and it's fun. And a teacher can um, oversee that, but also give kids the ability to work on their own and to challenge themselves with some various things and help other students. So it's that's the way I'd want to be. I mean, we have in service here next week, and I look at our teachers, and if I'm up there talking for too long, guess what they do? They tune out, right? I mean, that's human nature. Nobody wants to sit. I mean, sometimes our teachers, they're the worst students because they're thinking ahead, always wanting to do things in their classroom, and they can't be present in the moment because they're invested into what needs to get done in their own world. So noticing that they like to be challenged as well, and we try to apply that.
Speaking of
Oh
one
man,
guy
this is such.
talking too much, I've been saying too many questions in a row, but
Well,
if I could
no.
have one more, Johnny, please.
Yeah,
Uh,
I would love it.
if you could talk about this, Corey, there's another aspect of this situation you're talking about where you allow students to go at their pace, get to these challenges, invest themselves in the material, and then when you go to a kid like that and you say, "Hey, can you help your classmate with that?" That gives a self-esteem boost to that kid. Oh, you trust me to help my classmates? Oh, you actually think I'm learning? That's actually good for these kids, and it starts to have more of a meaning than we're learning to learn. No, I learned and now I'm helping people. Oh, hey, that's pretty cool. I'm actually building something.
We have a student-run business here called Carney Manufacturing. It's a tech ed, and they do machining and they do job shop stuff, for businesses in our area across the country, local partners, and that's exactly what it is. It's they're not just mass producing something. They are taking a problem that someone has, and sometimes people will come in as simplistic as some measurements written on a napkin and say, "Well, this keeps breaking on my tractor or my machine. Can you machine something that will withstand this?" And they will build a product. They will take it. They will engineer it on their CAD/CAM software. They will build prototypes. They will machine it. They will test it. They will if they have to redo it, they will redo it. But when they are done with that, they think they can do anything. They're ready to tackle the world. The sense of pride and confidence that student has, and it carries over into all other aspects of what they do in their life. And that's more powerful than anything else. I mean, if you believe you can do something, whether or not you have those skills or not, if you believe you can do something, you're going to do pretty well in life.
Yeah. Hey, Corey, and I like where we're going with this in terms of what it means for changes in education and the future of things, and it's exciting because I hear you talking about engagement and all the ways that technology changes, and what we do, like the craft of teaching and being in schools and learning, has purpose, and technology is changing our communities, and this is preparing young people for the lives and worlds they're going to be living in. You mentioned schools have done things the same way for a really long time. Jacob summed it up in his experience of why he didn't like parts of school. I think we can all relate. The stuff that doesn't make sense anymore, and it sounds like things are catching up and maybe aligning. But I wanted to. Sometimes when I think about AI, even though you've described it really well as this tool and things, I think of it as, you know, like eroding trust and like making facts and things more like less trustworthy. And it's just where my mind goes with that. Cause I think of like, oh, AI means chat GPT and chat GPT means everybody's an expert. But I also want to reiterate for our listeners, like when Corey's talking about AI, it's not just like a super powered search engine, like ask AI. It's AI powered technologies in the classroom that make teaching, I'm gonna say it, kind of like super teaching. Man, I
Mhm.
can't even remember, like Corey, especially as a high school, middle school teacher for a while, sometimes it was like 700 students. So when you're talking about, even if I'm lucky, I pick like an honors class to differentiate instruction in really well because they're all kind of close in what they know enough that I can achieve it. But 700 students, which is not much for an AI powered tool to sort through and say, Johnny, here's where students are learning and not learning and what they know and don't know and where you need to put more attention and specifically who needs that attention. It makes my job more doable. But can you talk about, just kind of talk about the technology a little bit, describe it to maybe say like the parent out there that's listening or the naysayer who's like, but that AI just spreads misinformation and just gets kids, looking stuff up on the internet where they think they're learning and they're not really learning. But kind of take us to the inner workings of it.
Well, if a teacher gives a, a task, and it can be, and you can use ChatGPT to finish that task, then we're asking the wrong questions, right?
Yeah.
And we tell everybody it's human prompted, so it starts with a human, AI generated, and it finishes with a human review. All too often, people forget the last step, and that is the human review because it hallucinates. It will give you incorrect information, but you have to be a wise enough consumer of that information to take a look at it and apply your knowledge and perspective to that based on what you're doing in the classroom. But when it comes to the AI powered devices, it's not, I mean, sure, ChatGPT and some of the other search engines are a part of that, but some of the things we're using like Conmigo, it replicates the teacher. How many times have you been at home? At least I remember my childhood being at home. You're here, do these 35 problems at night. Well, you get on number 17 and you get stuck on something. Well, you can't call up your seventh grade teacher and ask a question at that particular time. So what do? You ask your parents. Your parents probably have no clue because they haven't done seventh grade math in forever. They don't, but here you can ask Conmigo. And it's just a simple, sometimes it's simple. And it's not like they're just going to give you the answer. They'll prompt you and help you get to that answer. And then boom, you're not stuck on problem 17 anymore. You're going. So when kids want answers, they can get answers. And it doesn't have to happen between 8 and 3 o'clock in the afternoon when teachers are available. Or it doesn't have to happen when you've had your hand raised in the corner of the classroom and that teacher's helping another student. You can It helps replicate what the teacher is capable of doing. Now, it doesn't replicate the social emotional connections and the getting to know you things and that human connection, but it does serve a very good purpose. And these apps are driven to answer mathematical related questions or English language arts related questions. They aren't giving you statements that aren't related to that. When you get into those, you start to realize that, and they're super, super powerful.
I love that, Corey. Thanks for just kind of breaking that down for us. And we had astrophysicist Ethan Siegel on a couple weeks ago talking about same thing, folks. Like he was saying AI is really powerful because it knows what you've told it to know. And an AI that's been programmed to know those things can be really useful. So, like Corey was saying, an AI that's programmed, AI generated programs that have information given to them about English language arts, about math concepts, about doing math, about how you might learn to do math is going to be a pretty powerful tool at the hands of both teachers and students. We're excited about what's happening at Liftoff. We love what you've contributed here, Corey, but especially what you're doing in your district. Let's wrap it up soon. But Jacob, I think you got another question for our guy before we wrap up.
Yes, I do, Johnny. He reads my mind, Corey. He's good at that. I don't know how he does it. I know this is turning into the Jacob Remembers Being in School show, but I remember when I was a kid and I was in school, I learned about pirates. And the pirate ship is small and nimble, while the big Spanish galleon, it's got 100 cannons on it, but it's so huge it can't move. And I think sometimes in life we think, cities, that's where all the dynamic stuff happens. But actually, it's our rural communities who are able to actually try new things because the scale's smaller. Just last week on the show, Tim was telling us a story about how when he was a young teacher, he tried to set up a Civil War day. And just one thing like that in one school can take a lot of people working together to try something new. So try to multiply that by the city of Chicago's education system, and you realize why sometimes they can't try new things. I'd like you to talk about it, Corey. How has the size of your district enabled you to try some new creative things?
Well, what started as a reason for us to pursue this, because rural America, it's tough to get teachers. We're fewer and fewer people are entering the teaching profession. So from that perspective, but we also looked at it, and you're exactly right. Being small and nimble, being able to take an idea, engage a few people in that conversation, and run with it. I have a tremendously supportive school board. We have a wonderful community. Our staff is top notch, and because we work together, we have this family feel because we know the students, we know what their needs are. We're able to maneuver quickly, and at the end of the day, failures, working through these things, that's all part of the job. I mean, they know me well enough as a leader to know that, their job isn't in jeopardy because they failed at something. I want them to try. And if they fail in doing it, that's part of the process of learning. So I was just talking with a teacher today, one of our math teachers, young math teacher, and I said, you are exactly, you have every right to fail in this. And I understand that there will be productive struggle, but you going through that productive struggle at the same time as your students will give this more credibility because you're learning along with them. And, being small, we can have those conversations. We can meet in small groups, and you're exactly right. It's a more powerful vessel to be going through the seas with.
Thank you very much, Corey. That was great. And it's great to see rural America leading the way to something great we've got coming here in the future and giving people a sense of hope there that things can be improved. Johnny, the floor is yours.
Hey, yeah, I love it. Hey, what a great show. Listeners out there, what a treat to have, our guest, Corey Kulig here. Just to recap again, the superintendent from Aliva Strum School District in Western Wisconsin. And they're doing great stuff. Check out Liftoffs over there, or just keep your ear to the ground. Or hey, if you're a teacher, don't sleep on rural districts. I'd share that with my future teachers all the time. And I will say many of them are like, yeah, but I wanted to live close to and plug in the big city. And then they go and, 15, 20 years later, I talk to them and they're loving their job. They wouldn't trade it for the world. They've seen some amazing things happen. So big fan of what's happening in our rural districts. Appreciate the work that you're doing, Corey. Give a high five to our friend Mike Bigley when you see him next over there, and all your teachers. Get excited about the year. So thanks for busting pencils with us today.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
And now it's time for your moment of Zen. The cry of the poor is not always just, but if you don't listen to it, you will never know what justice is. Thanks for listening to Busted Pencils class in session today. And you can always grab great podcasts like this one. You just got to go to bustedpencils.com or, search on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever it is you get your podcast stuff. And don't forget, you can always find us at the Civic Media website. But hey, don't sleep on the fact that you can download great content all week long, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays with homerooms on Monday, class in session like today's great show with Corey on Wednesdays, and loads of fun to wrap up every work week and soon to be for you students out there, school weeks. Don't forget Fridays with producer Jakob. That's a special fun show. And you can always, listeners, catch us at 3 p.m. Central Time across all the Civic Media Network stations for 1 hour of your favorite blue-collar scholars on Saturday afternoons with Tim and Johnny. So keep busted pencils.